Anthony Joshua knocked out Robert Hellenius last night. This is the morning after the night before. And, when you watch the fight, well, not just that, when you watch any fight, when you watch it live and you're doing a watch along or you're doing a post fight review and you're watching it live then and there, you tend to miss certain things. You do get a bit caught up in the moment. And when you have a chance to reflect, wake up the next morning, look at it in the cold light of day, knowing what's already happened and being able to kind of really spot what you want to spot, keep the commentary off and just kind of dissect it, so to speak, you can really pick up on a few things that in some cases you'd say that's very good, and in other cases you'd say that's a worry. And with Joshua, I am looking at Joshua's performance last night and I'm saying, okay, based upon this performance he had against Robert Hellenius, a short notice opponent, similar dimensions to Deontay Wilder, but nowhere near as good, how would he fare against Deontay Wilder if they were to fight next? And, judging by some of the quotes we have here, Eddie Hearn declared after the fight that they'll try and get it finalised in the next few days for January next year in Saudi Arabia. Interestingly, it says here that Joshua stated that he wants 2 more fights this year, which I find interesting. So they're all talking about Deontay Wilder. If Joshua does have another fight or 2 this year, that's a good thing. But from what I seen there, if you went in next with Deontay Wilder, how do I think it would go? I'm going to be honest with you, based on what I seen last night, I think Deontay Wilder would have a lot of confidence watching what he saw last night, and I think he'd probably knock Anthony Joshua out, to be honest with you. Based upon what I seen, the good and the bad. The good is the footwork of Anthony Joshua looked very good. It really did. We look at the offense, which was lacking, it's fair to say, but we don't look at the subtle technical things that Joshua was doing in there from a technical point of view. And his jab was very good and his footwork was very good. Joshua's footwork is night and day better than Deontay Wilder. Wilder's footwork is abysmal. There's no other. He's constantly off balance. His footwork is just not there. So, and again, Joshua's always had reasonably alright footwork. He's not had the quickest feet in the world, but his footwork is not too bad. It looked better last night than I've seen it in a long time. And, I would say that's attested to the training he's been doing with Eric James, which is good, and he had a very good jab. But psychologically, you look at Joshua in there, and there's no ifs or buts. He was afraid to pull the trigger. Tony Bellew, I didn't hear this, but people were telling me Tony Bellew was on commentary. I don't know why they do that, but they put him on commentary, and he was saying that apparently he did an abysmal job, which is pretty normal at this stage. But he did apparently an abysmal job and was saying Joshua was carrying him, which he definitely wasn't. You could tell that Joshua was struggling to get the confidence to let those shots go. Because the right hand, the double jab combination which led to the right hand, which he stopped Hellenius with, that punch was there. That actual combination and shot was there for the majority of the fight. Maybe after the first 2 rounds, that shot was there. Joshua was seemingly unable to pull the trigger on it. And that's a worry. That definitely is a worry. He's very tentative about what was coming back at him. And the jab, the fact of the matter was, that jab was piercing the guard of Anthony Joshua from Robert Hellenius, which is really not a good thing, especially from someone like Hellenius. It was able to smash Joshua's nose to the point where it was bleeding a little bit, and it had a little mark under the eye. It was a bit of a swelling. That, to me, showed that Joshua he's probably overthinking about the offense of Hellenius in terms of the right hand, and he'd do that against Deontay Wilder, but he's not thinking enough about the basic simple little things like moving your head off centre line. Now, you could turn around and say, well, gee, if he did that against Deontay Wilder, it's not a good thing, but Wilder hasn't got a tutting jab. His jab is not really his best punch. Excuse me. And I would say you're completely right, it isn't. But at the end of the day, Deontay Wilder will paw with that jab happily, and his right hand is extremely fast, much faster than any shot Hellenius can throw. And if your head ain't off centre line, goodbye. You're done. And what I saw in there with Joshua doing that needs to change instantly if you're going to fight Deontay Wilder next. As I said, he was very tentative in this fight, very tentative, and he seemed afraid to get into an exchange and to throw punches. He really did. And the ironic thing is, when he did finally muster up the, I don't want to say courage to really go a little bit more offensive, he was able to get Hellenius out of there. So that could have been done a lot earlier. Now, for me, I think Joshua needs He said he wants 2 more fights. Honest to God, I would probably say give him another 3 fights before going in there with Deontay Wilder. I know some people could say, gee, that's unrealistic, and it probably is, but if you wanted to strip Joshua back as a fighter and really rebuild him, that's what you're going to need to do. He doesn't seem to. He just seems to be thinking, over analysing and overthinking everything. He seems to be worrying too much about what's coming back. And you have to be wary about what the opponent is going to do, but you don't need to hyper focus on it. And I think that's what Joshua was doing last night. And I think if you do that against Deontay Wilder, I predicted this a long time ago, and I said if he fought Deontay Wilder, one of the reasons why I'd favour Deontay Wilder is Joshua, excuse me, has a tendency to overthink in the ring. Eddie Hearn said he doesn't, but he definitely does. You can see that. And if he's in there with someone like Deontay Wilder, Deontay Wilder is the opposite end of the scale. He doesn't really overthink things. And I think it's because Deontay Wilder isn't the sharpest tool in the box. He tends to just kind of, he lives in his own little world. With the Fury situation, when that happened, you saw what he was coming out with. But he wasn't gun shy. He's not been gun shy at all. And I think that's because, again, he kind of lives in his own little bubble, his own little world, and just thinks, this is the reason why I lost, and this and this. And for him, that's true. So what's the reason to be gun shy? Whereas Joshua is like, well, against Ruiz this happened, against Klitschko this happened, I was rocked a few times against Usyk, I'm worried about what this guy is doing. It all mounts up and it all starts coming unstuck. And overanalyzing something can be good to a certain extent. It can be good in one sense where you focus on what the opponent is doing, but you don't overanalyze it and overthink it. You just you analyze it, you overanalyze maybe a little bit, and then say, okay, this is what he's doing. I'm not going to focus on it. I'm not going to hyper focus on it. What Josh was doing, he's hyper focusing on everything, and that's taken away from his performance. And against Deontay Wilder, you just can't do that. He'll eat you up. He'll eat you up if you do that against him, because you're going to focus so much on the opponent's strengths. You're just going to play into his hand. If you think of it in terms of a battle scenario, imagine you have an army and you're outnumbered, but you've got a better battle plan. So your plan, even though the numbers are not on your side, where you've set up base, where you're going to have your army in camp and where you're going to have your army set up, is superior than the numbers the other army have. But if you hyper focus on the numbers, if you're constantly overthinking that, if you think, well, we could set up like here, but they have more numbers, they're 3-1, so we need to do this and numerically this, instead of just thinking and leaving it as it was, you're going to hyper focus, you're going to go all over the place. Use your strengths. This is where you stand. This is our strengths, that's theirs. We're not going to focus on them, we're going to focus on this, and we're going to win this battle. Joshua doesn't do that. He hyper focuses. And I think that he needs confidence. His confidence definitely seems to be, in terms of a boxing sense, in terms of letting the shots go, down low. And I think he needs more rehabilitation fights, truth be told. I think he needs a Gerald Washington. I think he needs a Chris Arreola, people like that. Again, fighters who have been stopped, he can look devastating against. And then maybe go in there against Deontay Wilder in 2 or 3 fights' time. I think that if he goes in there against Deontay Wilder next, I would be making Deontay Wilder heavy favourite. I would. I'd be making Deontay Wilder heavy favourite. Now again, these are just the things I've seen from last night. Anthony Joshua, I'm glad he's sticking around with Derek James. And certainly when I looked at the jab and the footwork, they're 2 things that look very good for Anthony Joshua. And, that's obviously got to be some of Derek James' influence, which again is very good. So I'm happy Joshua is doing that. I'm happy he's learning new traits with Derek James, because I think that the reason why I want to see Joshua take his time and not just rush in head first into a Deontay Wilder fight is because I actually believe Joshua still has a lot to give. I believe that physically, he's probably not in his athletic peak anymore. He's probably not far removed from it. But physically, he still has a lot to give. He really does. And he still can be a top heavyweight. He lost to Alexander Usyk. That's fine. Alexander Usyk is a tremendous fighter. There's no shame in that. There's absolutely no shame in that. Alexander Usyk may very well be the best heavyweight of this era. So losing to him, there's no shame there. No one's going to think any less of you for losing to him back to back. A tremendous fighter, right? You can still beat a lot of these guys in the top 10, but it needs to be done the right way. You need to be brought back slowly, incremental step ups, and confidence builders. And I think in hindsight, Washington would have been a better fight than Hellenius last night. Maybe Hellenius would have been a good next fight. And I think that's what they need to do with Joshua. Is it feasible given the fact that he is paid a lot of money by the zone? He obviously has shares in the zone, and just I'm sure that if he wanted to take a hit on the purse, not have the pay per view, they could. But do the zone want to make money? Do they really want to wait around a year for Joshua to have another couple of fights? Sort of way. So it's like a lot of people are eating off Joshua. So, and again, with a Saudi offer, God knows how much that could be. It could be a crazy amount of money. It really could. But I think that if Joshua has a couple of more rehabilitation fights, that's why I say Joshua needs rehab, not Wilder. We could see him maybe not back to his best in terms of his most confident, which I reckon was 2017, 2018. But we could see him close to that. And I think that's what we need to do. I think that's what Joshua needs to do. And I think his team be well advised to do that. I think if you go in there with Wilder next fight, I'd be making Wilder favourite personally. And a knockout defeat, a big knockout loss to Deontay Wilder, that might spell the end of Joshua. And what would be frustrating for me is I may see a fighter in Anthony Joshua who I rate lose a fight that if he was brought back the right way, he may not lose. And he may have more miles to give. And going in with Deontay Wilder next fight, that may lead to him losing, and that may lead to him being completely finished from a mental, maybe even a physical point of view. And for me, I'd be looking at that thinking, that's an opportunity missed. Because if you brought him back the right way incrementally, different story on fight night. So that's just my thoughts, as I said, the aftermath kind of thoughts on it. Maybe I was meandering a little bit in this video, but I hope you get where I'm coming from. That there was good from Joshua in there. But what I seen in terms of him being unwilling to let his hands go to certain extents, being very tentative, overthinking in there what was coming back with Hellenius, head not moving off centre line. These are all things that need to be fixed if he's going to have any success against Deontay Wilder. They need to be fixed big time. The confidence thing is an issue, and the way you fix that is you have big, devastating performances, albeit against lower level, but nevertheless, it's going to build your confidence. I've always said that confidence is like you get a sponge and you put it to the bottom of a fish tank. It'll eventually come up to the top, but you're not the one who's going to force that. It's going to come up naturally over time. Don't try and force it up. It'll come up over time. Some will come up like that. Some will come up like that. It just depends. So that's what I say with regards to this whole situation. Let me know. We'll do a live this evening, 7:30. I hope you can all tune in. We'll do a live for an hour. We'll talk over it, and we'll talk about some of the other things that have happened over the last couple of days. For now, lads and lassies, I will leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, as well if you haven't already. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think that maybe I'm overanalyzing this myself? Or do you agree and think, actually, no, gee, he needs to fix a lot of things and he needs more rehab? Let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Peace.